Happy Tuesday from on the verge of a hurricane, Florida. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's Alan Schimmel at Techstrong. As I mentioned in the opening, we are in, we're usually down here in Florida, we say we're hip deep in alligators, but right now we're hip deep in hurricane preparation as Hurricane Milton, which is moving from a Category 3 to a Category 4 storm, bears down on the western Florida coast, and then it's going to move right across the peninsula. You can't hear it, but the rain is already coming down. It's been coming down here. But the show must go on. And so Techstrong Gang will go on today. We've got a great lineup for you. We've got some interesting topics to talk about. A report from a recent Tech Field Day, AI Data Infrastructure Tech Field Day report. What's going on new in the Time Berners-Lee world, as well, and so timely, managing the threats of extreme weather and cyber attacks. So we've got a lot, all that and more coming at you. We've got a great gang lined up for today, too. Let me introduce them to you. First of all, he's coming to us, I think, from across the pond, as they say today. He is the founder, CEO of Tech Field Day, now part of Futurum Group, my friend Stephen Foskett. Hey, Stephen, how are you?
It is great to be here. Yes, I'm in Old Blighty, halfway between MI6 headquarters and Parliament, which is, I guess, a good description of most of IT at this point as well.
Fair enough. Welcome, man. Thank you for joining us. Also from Futurum Group joining us, I don't know, are you home I assume she's home in Boulder, Camberly Bates. Hey, Camberly, how are you?
I'm great. It's a great fall day here. So
I was going to say, no hurricanes in Boulder.
No, we got blue skies here. Unfortunately, there's fires up in Wyoming that's causing a little bit of smoke down here, but not much.
Oh, man. It's extreme weather wherever we go, but Boulder's beautiful this time of year. Speaking of beautiful this time of year, it's baseball playoffs time, so he's in his rosy moment, but he's up in New York. Our Chief Content Officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, you know what? I left Florida and all hell breaks loose. I'm just saying, it's correlation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then I couldn't think of a better person to have with us here when we're talking about extreme weather and hurricane preparations than our own sustainability, sustainable IT and green and editor and analyst, Bonnie Schneider, who also happens to be a meteorologist and former TV weather person and author of several books on climate change. Hey, Bonnie, we got you. What a great day for you to be here.
Thank you.
All right, let's kick it off. Stephen, you guys also, you guys recently had an AI data infrastructure field day. And hoping, I don't know, maybe I think we're going to show a little video, but before we do, why don't you kind of set it up for us?
Sure. As I said in the video, this one came about after doing our AI field day events and having a lot of companies really wanting to talk about some of the underlying infrastructure for AI, including storage and data services. And so we decided to do a specialized event focused on data infrastructure for AI, which of course is the focus area of my good friend, Camberly Bates. And so the combination there just seemed unbeatable, and it really was. It was a great event with incredible presentations, great delegates, and a lot of incredible content.
Excellent. Before we roll to the video, Camberly, is there any kind of setup you want to lay out for the audience?
So the event was really interesting. One of the biggest pieces of it is the combination of these two types of experts in our delegates that don't normally mix. And it's not that we don't like each other. It's just that one side of it has to do with the data side, or the traditional data side of the house, which is in the IT operations side. And the other side is into the data engineering, which in years past would have been the data warehouse people or the management of the data, the MDM kind of work. And so we brought those both together to look at what these issues are, because they do come to rest here as we're trying to implement the AI strategy. Excellent.
With that, maybe we should go to the video. I feel like a sportscaster. Let's go to the video here for AI Data Infrastructure Day, Tech Field Day.
We're here in Santa Clara for AI Data Infrastructure Field Day this week, and I thought that I would take a minute to talk to the Techstrong gang about what's going on and what the major themes are coming out of AI DI Field Day. So one of the things that the delegates brought up was the fact that AI is getting a lot more complicated. It's getting kind of weird. There are so many more applications, there are so many more frameworks, so many more tools that are being deployed, and we're hearing about just this explosion of AI components. It reminds me a lot of what happened in cloud and DevOps and frankly every other part of the industry. When things started getting real, we started having more and more and more tools, and then there was a demand to try to simplify things. And I think that that's the second thing that we're hearing, is that we need to try to get control of all these things. We need to make them, as we heard from HPE, we need to make them enterprise ready. We need to have them be structured. We need to have them be deployable and be supportable. And I think that explosion tools is now kind of coalescing again into a much more sensible enterprise ready framework. But another big topic, and I think it's reflected by the delegates that we have here in the room and around the table, is there's a bit of a disconnect between the data people and the storage people, or between the applications and the infrastructure. And this is a traditional IT problem, and it's something that we're trying to address by basically bringing a diverse group of people together around the table and trying to get different voices and to have them listen to each other and learn from each other and bring different perspectives to the table. But companies need to do that too. And that's going to be a little bit harder because, of course, there are internal walls between organizations. And often, I mean, we see this with DevOps, there's a huge gap between the software developers and the data and analytics folks and the IT infrastructure folks and the IT operations. And it's hard to get all those people to the table, and it's hard to get them all talking the same language. But that's going to be required because it's been incredibly clear at this event and as well as at AI Field Day and frankly at Cloud Field Day and Edge Field Day and all the others, that modern applications span more than just storage or networking or security. Modern applications need to have all of the gestalt, if you want to, a picture of everything that's going on in the industry and in the infrastructure and in the stack. That's hard to do. So we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to be live with AI Data Infrastructure Field Day Wednesday and Thursday this week, and you can see the videos of those on LinkedIn, see them on YouTube, Tech Field Day YouTube channel as well next week. And we're going to be continuing this conversation as we go forward. So I recorded that video on day one of AI DI Field Day, and most of those themes continued in day two as well. I think that we had a few great presentations, including one that has already been nominated for the Best of Tech Field Day Award, which is always very cool to see. And we've had some, really incredible insights from the delegates. But I think overall, I think the thing that the delegates learned was the value of storage infrastructure when it comes to AI, and also this gulf that we recognized and we continue to recognize between essentially storage companies trying to talk about data, whether it's for AI or other applications. They need to have data people on staff. They need to understand those data people, and they need to let them help direct the company. And that was actually the topic of a podcast that we recorded as well that's going to be published soon and streaming on Techstrong TV.
Very cool.
Fascinating time with them because I got to sit with some people that, are the practitioners on both sides and working on the systems that are there. And when you had people like, we had Pure Storage, Infinidat, HPE talking about their integrated systems. We had Solidigm talking about drives. So actually, they were the ones with the best presentation. We'll kind of touch on that and why. But all of them talking not necessarily about drives or with some interconnect work, but really about what does that pipeline look like that we have to go through to get to the end result where we're implementing an application. And it's not one size fits all. It's a lot of work that has to be done to move data through the system, but also to manage, classify, and understand the governance around this data. And that means there's a whole lot of work to be done, not just from a technology standpoint, but from a people standpoint implementing the systems.
Fair enough.
So let me ask you this. I think you alluded to this, and maybe Stephen or Camberly, either one of you can address it, but are these data people feeling left out of the conversation around AI? Are they being ignored? And will this kind of be to the detriment of the initiative? Because it seems to me this whole AI thing revolves around the data.
I don't think so. I think that we have had so much focus recently on the GPUs. Can you get the GPUs? Can we, get to that point? But as you're going through your implementation, what you find out is your data ready? The data sets ready to be to train the systems? Is particularly around the RAG when I'm adding more of my personal data, my company's data into the LLM system. And so if you're not prepped for that, if your data is not ready to move over there, there's a whole lot of tools and capabilities that you need to work on to get there. So that's one. Number two is that we're now starting to look at if we implement a inference engine that we want to do things real time. So let's say I have a web services that's presenting information about a retail purchase of some sort. I want the latest information coming into that to do the suggested AI work. That means I have to take real-time information into that system. That is not going to be easy because we could be even talking about, mostly we've talked about file and object. Now we're talking about inserting block or transactional data into these systems. That's all pretty hairy stuff. It's not straightforward and easy. We don't have all of the tools and techniques out there. But what's happening is you're seeing this rush of people appropriately finding out, okay, so here's where the block is. Here's what we've got to need. This is what we need to address. And it can't be just cobbled together. Because otherwise we're really working too hard on the infrastructure as opposed to the application space. So there's lots of opportunity here to work on it, but there's also lots of roadblocks.
Stephen, it feels like to me that, we've been doing this batch-oriented processing thing for the last 5 decades, and now suddenly we're rediscovering that we need to do real-time. Are we up to the challenge?
I don't know if we're up to the challenge, but that is actually a pretty wise statement, Mike, because that's something that came up quite a lot during this conversation. If you had ETL on your bingo card in 2024, well, guess what? It's talked about quite a lot. And essentially, for the uninitiated, ETL is more of a batch approach to data processing where you extract, transform, and load data. It involves a lot of data movement, data processing before data can be used. And that conflicts and contradicts with the modern trend toward streaming data processing. And I think that one area that storage companies and storage protocols could be incredibly valuable is if they could enable less batch processing and more automated online stream processing of data. That's one area that we heard about from a lot of these companies. But of course, whether they can actually deliver that remains to be seen. And of course, even if they can't, even if there is still an ETL process, that leaves open the door for storage companies to do a lot of innovation in terms of helping to make those loading processes much, much quicker through storage offload protocols and moving computation closer to storage, and a lot of the things the storage industry has been looking at. So I think it's very, very relevant to the storage conversation, but also very relevant to transformative data conversations.
There's also a few, there are some areas that have to be addressed. I had a really fun interview with Rita Wahapi, who is a fellow at Solidigm, and this is a couple weeks ago, and she talked about a story with a manufacturing facility where the cameras are visually grabbing the information and sending it into the system, updating the system about errors, et cetera, to be able to track those systems. Well, what happened is that something got thrown off, a bad quality product got thrown off, and a camera was on that all night long. And all those errors of that data, all those errors of those products that were being produced that were wrong, got sent up to the main system itself. So when they all came in the next morning, they went from having maybe 3 or 4 error products during the day to having 1,000 in their system because it was real time stuff. I just had to laugh at it. Unfortunately, I'm sure they were horrified by it, but they had to then roll back the data and correct what was ever going on. So it's like, okay, so here's a real time application, but yet bad data in real time got sent up there because the AI system didn't know that it wasn't looking at something that wasn't real going through the system. So it's got both sides to it. And there you go.
Stephen,
Very
were there
cool.
any networking people at this event? Because sometimes I talk to the storage guys and they're like, everything is attached to the network. And the network guys are like, you want to send how much data, how fast, when? And they're like, they shake their heads and go, not today.
Well, the gap between storage and networking remains just as wide as it always has been. There were indeed networking people involved in our AI Field Day event, and a lot of networking companies were involved in that one. But the networking companies opted for AI Field Day rather than AI Data Infrastructure Field Day. I think it would have been beneficial, as you said, to have networking and storage both represented equally here. But in practice, they ended up being split.
Interesting. We're doing this new video series in partnership with the folks at Cloudflare. It's called The Last Great Cloud Transformation. And it kind of talks about that unique relationship, right? Because in a world where we are storing our data, not just at these hyperscaler core data centers, but on the edge and on endpoints and everywhere in between, the connectivity and security, right? And why are we doing that? To cut latency for AI and stuff like this. But without connectivity and security, it's just not going to happen. And so they call it a connectivity cloud, right? And I think they're onto something with it. You could check that show out on Techstrong TV, by the way. Interesting stuff. Why don't we take a break here, though? We're going to come back. The one and only Tim Berners-Lee. I don't know, some people call it Berners-Lee. I always said Berners-Lee because it was Swiss, and I thought it was French, but whatever. I digress. But he's got a shiny new object he's chasing, and the World Wide Web Foundation is closing up shop, maybe as a result of that. Let's take a break. We'll come back and discuss that. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
In a world where every line of code powers the future, every keystroke can introduce new threats. As software evolves, so must security. It's time to rethink how we protect our digital world. Join the leaders in DevSecOps and AI at the OpenText DevSecOps Virtual Summit on September 24th. Discover how innovation is transforming software delivery, faster, more secure, and smarter. From AI-driven security to the truth behind cloud security, get the insights that will keep you ahead of the curve. Don't just watch the future unfold. Be part of it. Register now and secure your place in tomorrow's world.
All right, folks, as Alan talked about, we are back, and it is Tim Berners-Lee, just to clarify the matter, has announced that he's walking away from this World Wide Web Foundation, which is not the W3C. It is a separate little effort that he was spearheading. They were addressing a number of issues, and I guess what Tim is after here is he wants to spend more time working on this solid protocol that's going to reinvent the way we think about the web. But he also just noted that basically the foundation may have become obsolete because, well, other groups are working on it, or in some instances, he just declared victory and said, we're done with this and it's all good and we'll move on from here. Stephen, I know on a previous show, we talked about this solid protocol project that Tim is trying to spearhead. It's interesting, but I have to say, I think I've seen now 10 efforts to reinvent the web over the years, and none of them went anywhere. So what makes you think this one's going to be any different?
Well, as we talked about back, that was July 30th, we talked about Web 5. And I think that tells you a lot about just what's wrong with the internet and these approaches today. I'm sorry, Web 5? What happened to their other webs? And which Web 5 is this? Remember, there was 2 different Web 3s. So I think that what we need is more products and less concepts. But that being said, I really like the product that Time Berners-Lee has here, the idea that he has for it. And I like the fact that he's going to be focusing on that rather than some of the philanthropic initiatives that he had been focusing on, along with his wife and others, including a former UK Prime Minister with the World Wide Web Foundation. So the idea behind the solid protocol is fundamentally that people should own their own data rather than having it be controlled by large internet companies. That's the idea. The more practical application of that is that essentially each person should be able to have their own personal online data store where they would have their identity, their access, their indeed some of the actual data itself. And then that would be able to be accessed on demand by other services, but that would be in the control of the user rather than in the control of one of the big web companies. So fundamentally, think about the place of something like Facebook or Google or Apple in the world, where essentially you have many, many other services that are querying your Google account or your Facebook account for authorization, for authentication, for data access, for sharing, and having all of that instead live in your own portable data store that would be yours to do with as you want, to control as you want, and frankly, to move around and turn on and off as you want, which is something that people really can't do. If that sounds like a novel concept, then you haven't been paying attention, because certainly a lot of other people have been trying to advocate for something like that. But I think that having somebody like Berners-Lee, who has a thorough understanding of the underlying protocols and the nature of the internet, as well as deep, deep connections to basically every company involved in something like this, makes this one to watch, whether it happens or not.
Do you freeze?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Camberly, I know that you kind of paid attention to some of this too, so I want to jump in here a little bit while we figure out our...
Yeah, I haven't dived in completely into what's going on here, but with the solid protocol, but I hear what Stephen's saying is this is addressing some personal data, but I'm also seeing the implementations that are up there that are actually real, appear to be real implementations, even though I haven't taken briefings from them, have got a level of business orientation. In fact, there was one company that has, because this is clearly it's a community. I believe it's a company called Athumi, and they were established by the Dutch government. Okay, so take that one. And that establishment of the Dutch government is what it looks like they're doing is they're using this protocol or platform or whatever it is to implement shared data. And so, for instance, this cable pipeline information platform that the contractors can request detailed information about cables and pipelines. And this is somewhat of a secured owning that data that perhaps is what it's going to a area where, like a government situation where they're dealing with a lot of other people, that information can be shared, dropped in there, added to it into this environment. So I think that there's more to this than just me having my own personal kind of data that would move around or with me with wherever I want. There's also looks like there's a whole lot of privacy kind of thing. So it's a place that I would love to, I'm going to dig into. And, next time we're kind of back and together, kind of like saying, okay, so this is what this is looking like in terms of where it's going, because we've seen, I'll wrap it up with this. We've seen this thing of disaggregated storage, where I'm using different data pieces that are all over the world and using erasure coding to kind of bring it back up together. So there's some real uniqueness in whatever he's doing here and the issues of what he's trying to address.
I'll tell you why I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about this thing. Is going back to our previous block, AI is all about the data. And I think people are waking up in the morning and finally figuring out that they need to control their data if they're going to be successful in the age of AI. So I think that this initiative in particular, it may not be the right answer, but Alan, it seems to me everybody suddenly has a much greater appreciation for the value of their data.
I saw this coming about. It was towards the end of COVID, or maybe right in the middle of COVID going to the end, Mike. All of a sudden, it's like people woke up and remembered that data, it's all about the data, stupid. All of AADS. Because, when you think about it, for the last 12, 15 years before that, it was all about applications. It was all about the apps, app development, applications, mobile apps, cloud apps, everywhere is an app. I got an app for that. But really, all the apps were a front end for us to be able to get to and visualize our data. It's the data that's the crown jewels here, right? It always was, but we somehow lost that focus. But this is a trend that I've seen. Camberly's probably seen it much more than me. She's close to this. But there's a trend I've seen coming for the last 3 years where the ascendancy of data is, what it's all about again. And that's a good thing.
I don't know, Camberly, maybe we're both old enough to remember, but I seem to remember when I first started out in this business that, it was always bring the compute to the data. And then about a decade ago, we started playing around with this cloud thing and we started moving data into the cloud, and everybody, the old timers, were like, what are you doing moving data? That's crazy. Nothing good happens when you move data. And yet here we are full circle now trying to figure out how to bring compute back to where the data already exists because we want to control it more. So have we, kind of come around on this journey?
Well, first of all, I think most of the real secure data never moved up to the cloud.
Yeah.
So when we think about the enterprises and the implementation, the banks have kept their data within their mainframe systems, or most of them have. You have the healthcare, for the most part, have kept their data, or there's specialized firms that have a cloud that are offering the healthcare. So a lot of that data never moved up there. We saw the enterprises move a lot of big data protection offerings. DR kind of works, so there was been copies of data. This might be what Time Berners-Lee is doing, is addressing the fear that we have of dropping our data into the cloud. So I can control, instead of dropping it into a public cloud, which I'm responsible for my security, I am responsible for my reliability, I am responsible for my data protection. Make no bones about it. It goes up there, you are still responsible. So if I have a different system, but that is more cloud-like, perhaps this is maybe what the protocol is offering. Again, it's something I would need to look into. And that, I believe one of the things that we really came to tune with in the last 5 years or 4 years is looking at what Facebook and Twitter and Google and those people are doing with our data and how they can how that data can get abused against us. Not that they're abusing it, but, or maybe they are, I don't know. And I'm paranoid. The NSA is recording everything I say. There you go. You look at that and you say, okay, so, how do you do this? And so then we default ourselves to encrypted systems like WhatsApp and thank goodness that, I believe that, Apple has not turned over the phone yet. Believe me, the government would love that, to crack that thing open.
I think they have the ability to crack that. Phones. Apple didn't necessarily help them. But, there's a reason how Israel is able to monitor all of those phone conversations that they do.
I don't know. Stephen, you're in England today. So with the Official Secrets Act, how are you, what's your sense of, I want my data and nobody else can have it. But, if you're in England, you got to cough it up. You're on mute.
Since I'm located literally around the corner from MI6, as I said, I'm wondering what's going on with this choppy internet service here. I'm wondering if maybe Camberley's right. I did take a picture of MI6 headquarters this morning, and that probably put me on somebody's watch list. But yeah. I would say that I think what we're kind of all dancing around here is the effect on end users and the needs that users have. I think increasingly people are smarting about the external control that companies have of their data, the fact that we have continual data breaches and data breach notifications and laws to control this. I think a lot of this is really making people angry about the way that their data is being handled online, and feeling that they really would rather have something that was more controlled and more having their own hands around it. And I think that really is what Berners-Lee and company are responding to here with the Solid protocol. It is a political statement to say that you should own your own data and your own identity separate from cloud service providers and social media companies. And I think that that's attractive to people if this thing gets off the ground.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, because what's really wrong with the situation today is most of the companies collect data and they get in their head that they own that data when we're kind of just lending it to them, and they're stewards of that data and they need to behave accordingly. And I know the laws are somewhat vague in this particular element. And so maybe we need to go back and kind of solidify those laws a little bit. But I think we should remind companies that, this data we're giving you is only a loan. It's not yours to keep.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. That being said, though, let's take a break right here. We're going to come back and talk about managing threats, sort of a perfect storm, if you will, extreme weather and cyber attack at the same time. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Welcome back to the Techstrong gang. Well, here on the East Coast of the U.S., and I guess in other parts of the country, we've been dealing with a lot of extreme weather lately. And this doesn't just encompass hurricanes, but out west, wildfires. There's just a lot going on. And in the summer, we get heat waves. I wanted to take a closer look at how, with climate change bringing about more of these extreme weather events, are bad actors taking advantage of this in terms of cyber attacks. And I'm not the only one who was thinking about this, because Johns Hopkins University did a research study on it to see what would the impact be if these two events actually happened at the same time. So in this video, I take a closer look at their findings.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Schneider with your EcoTech Analyst Insights. Today, we're exploring a critical issue: how extreme weather events are creating new opportunities for cyber attacks, and what this means for our digital infrastructure. Climate-induced weather events are on the rise. In 2023, the U.S. experienced a record-breaking $28 billion weather and climate disasters. While physical damage is evident, these events also expose vulnerabilities in our digital systems. A Johns Hopkins study warns that hackers could time cyber attacks to coincide with extreme weather. In a Long Island, New York simulation, researchers found a heat wave alone increased electricity demand by 9%, and a cyber attack alone left 4% of demand unmet. But what would happen hypothetically if these events occurred at the same time? The study reports that would result in 12% of demand unmet and the possibility of power outages for over 200,000 homes. Healthcare facilities are also at risk. Overburdened emergency response teams and weakened defenses create opportunities for cyber criminals to target these critical systems when they are the most vulnerable. In navigating these complex threats, organizations must evolve their cybersecurity strategies to account for climate-related risk. This means investing in advanced detection systems capable of identifying unusual patterns during extreme weather events. Other steps include secure backup power, diversify communication channels, and secure critical data in multiple locations. Perform regular stress tests to identify weaknesses and improve response times. And finally, leadership should strive to foster a culture of cybersecurity awareness among all employees. The convergence of extreme weather and cyber attacks presents a complex challenge, but it also offers an opportunity for innovation in risk management. By adopting a holistic approach that addresses both the physical and digital vulnerabilities, organizations can build more resilient systems equipped to handle the combined challenges of climate change and the shifting cyber landscape.
So some of the suggestions I put in the video for cybersecurity companies may seem native that they would know to do those anyway, but I think that just being aware for their clients who are in more susceptible to climate-related risks is really going to have to be part of this equation going forward, even more so as we see these threats not only grow in terms of intensity, but one of the things I found in my research, because I actually wrote a book called Extreme Weather, is that these threats are happening in terms of extreme weather to more populated areas, places like on the coast where maybe 50 years ago we didn't have the same size population that we do now. So I think it's an important thing to keep a close eye on and prepare for the worst case scenario, both in the physical structure and the digital as well.
I'll tell you, speaking as a security person, I think, what you have to always remember is that the bad guys hardly ever miss an opportunity to take advantage of a disaster, whether it's climate related or health related or financial related or what have you. This is when people tend to let their guard down. They're harried, they're rushed, they may not be following their usual protocols, and it's just a prime time for the people with evil intentions to do evil things. And it's easy for us to sit here and say this is when you should be more vigilant than ever. But the world doesn't always work this way when calamity strikes, right? We're seeing that right now as we sit here getting ready for this Hurricane Milton. But in the meantime, much of the southeast of the U.S. is still trying to dry out from Hurricane Helene or Storm Helene before it, which is, and I haven't been up there, but I think we've all seen the pictures. It's wreaked havoc in North Carolina, in Tennessee, northern Georgia, places that aren't used to those kinds of floods in the mountains. And, what happens is now the jackals set in, right? The carpetbaggers and the cybersecurity bad guys.
That's true. And they're not only threatening like infrastructure during a storm as that scenario played out, but Alan makes a good point. And I've seen FEMA put out notice about this right after. There's going to be so many people that are doing the phishing scams and taking advantage of people when they're vulnerable.
Oh, yeah. They'll come and, we'll lend you some. I mean, they do all kinds of stupid scams for people to sign away their benefits or,
But But to Alan's point, they get you when you're stressed out. Like, you know,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that Stephen's getting a phishing email right now about how to improve your internet connections in England.
Yeah.
I hope
or
so. I might click on that one.
reportedly someone from MI6 saying, Stephen, you don't want us to show these videos we found on your hard drive about your, you know,
He's frozen.
poor Stephen. But you know, these things, this is why we can't have nice things on the internet, right? The bad guys are consistently bad. But you know, it's a great video, Bonnie, and I think, especially as I think Camberly, you mentioned, you've got fires out in Wyoming messing with you there, all out west. We've got drought, we've got floods, we have all kinds of biblical kinds of things, not to mention wars going on. And it's not a time to let down your cyber guard. It's a time to be more vigilant and make sure you follow your cybersecurity best practices and policies.
Wait, I'm clicking on this email about free Yankee tickets right now.
Right now, exactly.
That's taking advantage of the nice weather up there,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap up our Tuesday show here. The good news is we will be doing our rest of our shows. I don't know if we'll be here at our Boca headquarters because we don't know what to expect. I unfortunately have to travel all the way out to San Diego, California. Someone's got to do it. So I will be hosting the rest of this week's Techstrong Gangs out of sunny San Diego. I hope you'll join us. Stephen, good luck in London. Camberly, maybe we'll see you on, but stay safe. If not, we'll see you next week for sure. Bonnie, you're going to be...
I'll be here tracking the hurricane.
Bonnie's playing Jim Cantori.
That's true.
And Mike, you'll be safe up in your back up in New York.
Oh, well, is there going to be like a live Bonnie broadcast out in the weather?
I thought those days were behind me.
Yeah,
but yes.
no, we got like a little rain. Yeah, no, we got the fans blowing and everything. Are you kidding? It's going to be fun. Anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Techstrong Gang. I remind you that we have a full lineup of Techstrong TV immediately following this, and we'll have it all week. But until tomorrow, this is Alan Schimmel. Thanks, gang members. Thank you out there. You just watched Techstrong Gang.